Welcome to Philly Fortune Talks with your host, Jake Penny, where the city's brightest minds share the secrets behind their success. Are you ready to be inspired?
Welcome to another episode of Philly Fortune Talks, where we highlight the story of Philadelphia's most dedicated and successful business leaders. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Melissa Simmons, a seasoned real estate investor and entrepreneur with over a decade of experience. Melissa, along with her husband, have been investing in real estate in the Philadelphia greater area since 2008. A 2015 graduate of Jumpstart Germantown program, Melissa obtained her real estate license in 2017 and went on to purchase PMI Property Management franchise in 2018. She now manages residential and commercial properties as well as homeowner associations. Recently, Melissa passed her real estate broker exam and is in the process of obtaining her broker's license. She and her husband currently own 14 units in the greater Philadelphia area, and they also operate a successful restoration and repair business. Melissa takes pride in providing quality services to tenants, owners, and repair clients. In her spare time, Melissa enjoys traveling, spending time with her family and friends, and volunteering for the Philadelphia Ship Preservation. Join us as we explore Melissa Simmons' journeys, her insights on property management, and her commitment to excel in the real estate industry. Let's get started on Philly Fortune Talks. Melissa, it's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
So, Melissa, tell me about your journey on real estate. In real estate, since it's been a decade, can you share what initially motivated you to start real estate investing in 2008?
Yeah, so my husband and I were dating at the time. Pretty early on in our relationship, we just started kind of having these conversations about finances and where we wanted to be. We read Rich Dad Poor Dad, as so many people do, and started, we kind of read it and then shoved it on a shelf for you were like, I don't know about this. And then he got a job. He was working for SEPTA. And, to start with, it was an overnight position, mostly weekends. And it was 5 days a week, but over the weekend, that really sucked. Had great benefits, reasonable pay for the time, but, very little control over his life. He was low man on the totem pole because he was, more recently coming in. He was working as a mechanic on the L and on trolleys. And, as such, he was last to pick his vacation time, just not a lot of freedom in life. And so then we picked that book right back up again and started really, thinking more about it. We took a 3-day Rich Dad course and we just worked that. I read every book that came with that course cover to cover. We didn't really invest a lot into the higher thousands of dollars education, but we made what we paid for count. And we went out and we bought our first little rental property in Germantown for $25,000 and
Wow.
renovated it. And in the process of all of that, the economy kind of collapsed. And it's our lenders for our refi kept going out of business in the middle of us
Oh,
trying to refi the property. But we made it through, and that property cash flowed for us for quite a number of years. We did sell it about 2 years ago at a profit, so it all worked out.
I really miss when properties you could get them for $25,000.
I know, and I think we put 35 into it, and at the
Oh,
end, it was worth 85 or 90 on the appraisal, and we walked away with a check for $11,000, and we were like, this is amazing.
this is
We walked away
amazing.
from the burr, refi, and we're like $11,000. I mean, we were 26 at the time. So
Yeah.
$11,000 to a 26-year-old in 2008 was okay, we're hooked.
I got the bug now. So
Mhm.
what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when getting started, and how did you overcome them?
I mean, I would say it was just what was going on with the economy. I mean, we have totally different things going on with the economy now, but
Right.
what was going on with the economy in 2008, and it was very stressful because we had a hard money loan on the
Ooh.
property. I mean, we didn't have any money at the time. I mean, I think we had to put down 6,000 or something, and it was all we had in our savings account. And I worked at a nonprofit, and so it was okay, we got to get out of this loan, and we applied, and then it was just oh, sorry, in the middle, we're not doing loans anymore, we're out of business, and then we applied for another one, and it was just well, you don't meet our requirements. You have to own the property now for a year. And they were starting to put all these much, heavier requirements into it.
Hmm.
And we weren't meeting them because we didn't have enough seasoning, or this was our first property. We haven't done it enough. And so I think a lot of it was just, and it's kind of been the story overall is right, being persistent. Okay, you told me no, let me not just calling one more lender the next day. I'm gonna call three and see who's gonna call me back, and just being incredibly persistent till we found a lender who was willing to work with us. We did have great credit, so that was something we had going for us. And my husband's job that he wasn't liking. I mean, he's my husband now, my boyfriend at the time, but at least it was that steady W-2 income, and we were able to use that and finally get it done. So just not throwing my hands in the air and giving up on it.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's I've had that experience back in 2016, going bank to bank to bank to bank and just getting denied. But man,
Yeah.
I was in 2008. I was in probably eighth grade, worrying about riding my bike than buying real estate. I wish I was buying real estate in eighth grade.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we got started early. I wish we had
Yeah.
been able to buy more earlier on, but we were just kind of like taking it, one step at a time. We were doing about a property a year.
Yeah, in the beginning, it's definitely like you really like for at least for us, we really didn't start scaling until year like 5 or 6 or 7. I would probably say like 5 or 6. So it's like those first couple of years are really about like learning, taking it slow, so you don't go too quick, um, and just really soaking it all in. But
Yeah.
that's amazing. So like you've achieved a lot in your career. What key, strategies helped you grow from like an investor to managing PMI property management franchise?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, I mean, for us, it has been like taking it slow, learning from our mistakes, learning from other people's mistakes, making sure that we
Mm.
had mentors to talk to. I mean, even though we'd been in it for 7 years, like when we had the opportunity to do the Jumpstart program, we were part of their second class, summer of 2015. I was super pregnant at the time. So we were going through like their walkthroughs, and I'm just like, can I sit down? I'm like 8 months pregnant, but we did it. We graduated. And that was really helpful because they give you a mentor. I'm actually signed up as a mentor now for their
Oh, that's
programs.
awesome.
But it was great just to have somebody who'd been through it. I mean, even just little pieces of advice, like he gave us our packet that like before then we didn't give appraisers a packet when they came out for our properties, and I think that's knock on wood, it's never failed us so far, where we're making sure that appraiser knows everything that we've done to that property, right? Because a lot of times they're walking through it, it's occupied. There's a tenant living there.
Yeah.
They're trying to stay out of the tenant's way. They're measuring stuff, they're looking, but we want them to know and notice like, oh, the electric's all brand new in here. We did this, we did that. That's why it's worth what it is now. So we could get the most out on our refis back in the day when, the rates were super low and
Oh, miss those
um
times.
yeah, but just, and we have made mistakes. I mean, everybody does in this business, but making sure that we're able to learn from them, and trying to like, not make it have us give up,
Right.
just don't repeat that again. And, like I said, listening to any coaches, mentors. I mean, even my PMI franchise, that's a big reason I went with a franchise to start my property management company, is because it came built in coaches and mentors. I have a meeting with my business coach still every week, Tuesday at 4:30. And, we talk about whatever challenges we're facing. And, I think that's super important. Like take advantage of that stuff.
Absolutely. Your peer group mentors and everything like that. I mean, heck, if you could have a business in a box with mentors and coaches, I mean,
Mhm.
who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, they handle our website. I do some of our social media that's more personalized, but they're doing, regular posts. They're working on our SEO. They're working, just even as far as our software is concerned, like I don't have to research which software. They just tell me what to use. Um, and that's, for the most part, that's been good because it's not taking me away from the actual properties, managing my team, all of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we're going through it right now where, we have our own property management. We do our own property management for all of our properties, but we're, you know, scheduling demo calls with DoorLoop, AppFolio, Buildium, all these things. And it's like we've been using apartments.com, the free version, and spreadsheets for the longest time. And it's like, gee whiz, this is getting a little crazy.
Yeah.
Let's start being legit. We are legit, but like our back end isn't where it should be. So it's like,
Right.
you know, with the PMI, they do all that for you on the back end and have it done for you. So that's great.
Yeah, and even stuff like I had a client on the HOA side call up. They had been a client, and then we sort of mutually decided it wasn't a good fit. They were
Mm.
looking to save money. They've been doing their own thing for the past year, and they called me up yesterday and they're saying, um, our books aren't what they should be anymore. Can you come back and fix it? And we need it fixed in a hurry. And quite honestly, my staff doesn't have capacity to just like jump in and do this huge
Hmm.
project. But corporate's there. I can call corporate, and so we're waiting, and corporate will give us a price to have. They have a whole bookkeeping team. So if we have something come that like that's like a big project, or even just a new client who's like, we want you to onboard with us and our books are a disaster. Can you help us?
Mm.
Whether it's on the residential side or the PMI side, I don't have to have like the in staff house staff capacity to take on this extra project that's only going to be temporary, right? Like,
Right.
so I can go back and pull that temporary staff kind of from corporate, and they'll help us out with it. So that's
So
good.
speaking of that, kind of like that little challenge with the HOA on their side more than your side, right? Can you describe a particular challenging property management situation and then how you resolved it?
Yeah, so I would say like one of our biggest things, and it's actually really been more with my own property. We had a big fire
Mm.
back in 2017, and that was like a new thing, right? Like, and a lot of managers have been a lot of investors like, hopefully you're never going to encounter a fire, right? Like, it's not an everyday thing, and it was a big one. Like, I think it's on YouTube.
Oh,
if you
wow.
search for it, like some guy took pictures. Like, there's somebody has a YouTube channel that's like big fires of Philadelphia or something.
Oh man, famous.
It's like, your fire is bad when it's like people are posting it on YouTube and you can hear the it was multi alarms. It was in our 5 unit building that we own.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful old building built in 1901. And so that was huge because where my husband and we left, we got the call from one of our tenants, like the building's on fire. It turned out it was a tenant used a bad an extension cord. So
Mm.
but just all the emotion of it, we're standing outside our biggest asset to date, and the thing's just burning up, and then you hear the chainsaws going,
Oh man.
and what people don't tell you about a fire is that, as the landlord, we're standing out there and there's about a dozen of these like restoration companies, that want to board up your property, like circling like vultures outside your
Vultures.
property. Oh, you're the owner? Here's my card. And like, you weren't planning on this. It's 9 o'clock at night. Like, my kid, we left him with my mother. We thankfully had been at my mother's house, and he's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 at the time. And we're like, he doesn't have any jammies with him. I'm sitting there, we came in one car. We're like, our tenants are standing out there and we can't even go into the property because the thing's still on fire.
Yeah.
So, dealing with these guys, like kind of bombarding us with their cards. And then the next morning, we'd been up most of the night and we have a little kid at home. And suddenly insurance adjusters are banging on our front door. Like, they've tracked us down. They want us to hire them. So just
Wow.
dealing with all of that is like, it was unexpected, like how many people then are like vying for your business when you have a
Yeah.
fire. And so for us, we made the mistake of hiring one of these guys off the street that came with a card, because we're like, well, we need someone to like, tarp the roof and board up these windows and get fans and things in here, and they did a terrible job. So now that I run a property management company and all that, we're partners with ServPro.
Hmm.
They're, I think, a nationwide company. They're also franchises. They're not the cheapest guys out there, but typically, one thing we learned is that your insurance typically has like kind of almost a separate pot of money, and they want you to take care of that stuff to prevent further damage right away.
Yep.
That they're going to pay it, and a company like ServPro that's professional is going to work directly with your insurance company. They're not going to be asking you for a check. standing out there, and it's okay to hire the guys that know what they're doing to just take care of it for you. So that's like a big lesson that I learned. And then in terms of adjusters, again, like if they're banging on your door for your business, they're probably not who you want to go with. So, and we didn't. That was one mistake we didn't make. We actually did the insurance claim on our own.
Oh
um
wow.
we
Okay.
were able to do okay. We maxed out and almost got the full value of our policy, so we were happy with our claim, and we were able to put the building back together again. In today's environment, insurance claims seem to be changing a lot. They seem to be getting denied a lot more often, and I would definitely, even though we were successful that first time, I would probably consider working with adjuster, because the environment in that world of insurance claims does seem to have changed, and gotten a bit tougher to get them to actually pay what they're supposed to pay.
Oh yeah.
So,
Without a doubt.
but just like having been through it once, I would say the biggest thing for me is, like, at the time, it was like I just felt like the waves of stress coming over me, like, oh my God, this terrible things happened. But you know what? Like, in the end, it was okay. Like, we our insurance payment came out. The property, we had replacement cost coverage. I would just, my advice would be, talk to whoever, talk to your insurance broker and ask them, if you don't know what that means, the difference between actual value and replacement cost. Find out what that means if you're going to own property, because I think we would have done a lot worse if we had had actual cost insurance on there, um but we did do that part right. And that'd be my biggest thing, is if you have a disaster, like, breathe, it's going to be okay. Check your insurance now, but as long as you have good insurance, you'll be okay.
Yeah, never cheap out on insurance. We actually went through the same exact experience on an 8-unit building. We just bought it. It was a month and a half in. One of the properties caught on fire, and now this was a whole 100% non-performing building. All the tenants were either they were drug dealers,
Oh,
weren't paying rent. There was squatters, everything, and we sent the eviction letters, well, and everything like that because there was no payment coming through. We already knew from the previous owner that this was a problem. It was a problem with police, everything like that, and what do you know? We get an email back from one of the tenants and said, "Hey, I got your letter. I'll be out." Like all cocky and whatnot. You can tell when it's like bold text and everything. She's like, "By the way, someone lit your house on fire next door." So it's 8 units, but each it's 8 individual single 4-bedroom single family homes on one parcel. It's weird. It's interesting. Um, and we were like, no way. Like, who would that didn't happen. We didn't get a call from police, the city, or fire department. So around like 2 o'clock that day, we said, oh, let's go check it out. Let's drive by. Let's see if this person's actually telling the truth or just pissed off and wants to get under our skin. So we drive by, and what do you know? There's all the windows are busted out, char all over the brick, not one call. And this was like she emailed on Saturday morning. We went, I think on Monday around that time, nothing whatsoever.
wow.
And we called township, we called the city. They wouldn't even talk to us because they were like, we don't even know if you're the owner. And yeah, though. So short story, we always talk about insurance, insurance, insurance. We talk to our investors and say, hey, you're an additional insured on the policy if it burns down, but not everybody. I would probably say 90% of people don't actually go through it to actually
Yeah.
learn. And unfortunate event, but what an awesome learning experience. Because now going forward, you can say that, hey, I actually went through this. I know what it's like. And now I'm super prepared now because I didn't, all those blind spots you see going through it. You're like, oh my God, I didn't know that. How did you have to do this, that, and the
Yep.
third? So no, that's unfortunate event, but also fortunate that you got to go through that.
Yeah, I mean, and the more properties I manage, right? Like, percent the risk goes up that I'm going to encounter it
Yeah.
again. But, if it happens and it's a client property, hopefully they can feel good that I can tell them, like, look, you've been through this before. They send us their insurance policies. We try, if we catch it, that we see an actual cost, we try to be like, we're not a broker. I can't advise you, but you might want to talk to your broker. And insurance is one of those things where some of these brokers will be like, oh, I can beat that price. And they give you
Hmm.
this cheap price, and you're like, sweet. And you sign up for it and you don't realize that you're losing coverage. So,
Oh yeah.
definitely a big one.
So building your team with PMI and just in your real estate business as well, what qualities do you prioritize and why?
So I would say, a lot of it is making sure I'm not hiring people that are exactly like me,
Hmm.
We want people with different personalities, different skill sets, people that can fill in the areas that I'm not so good at, different personality types. And just knowing when to turn things over to the expert. I mean, as a property management company, prior to 2020, we used to just do evictions in house unless it was something that for some reason was super complicated, Like I'd go down as the main manager, especially when you're getting started, and I'd go through court or whatever because, I knew we had our paperwork, I knew we had everything together, but since COVID and since Philly's just becoming more and more and more tenant friendly, tenants are coming in
Yeah.
with free lawyers and everything else. We took a step back and, we have an attorney that we work with. And, I mean, if a owner has their own attorney, we can work with them, but otherwise, and our attorney is great. He gives a little discount for, because we're property manager. So eventually he's going to get repeat business, there's always a percentage or people coming to us with problem properties. But, like I said, knowing when to turn it over to him. Just same with anything. If something is outside of like our scope, being able to like have a team member in place um that knows how to do it better than me. I mean, at this point, like my bookkeeper for the property management company, like she knows her software better than I do. And I love that. Like that's what you want, right? When you're building a team, you
Absolutely.
don't want to be like always the smartest person on the team. You just want to be the leader and, trust her to run with it and be able to answer all those account questions and things like that.
Yeah, it's like Henry Ford. Henry Ford, had all the A players and he just clicked the button when he needed an answer. He wasn't better than them. They were better than him. But he
Yeah.
just built that leadership to be able to have all that access to that information and, really good skill sets.
Yeah. And then, I mean, for the property manager too, just having a solid team of vendors, right?
Oh yeah.
Making sure that I have like a reliable roofer, and I mean, any vendor is going to screw up. Like people are all human, right? But knowing that that vendor is reliable so that if, something happens where it's like, you didn't do this job. Like, what did your guys do over here? I mean, it was like a one-time thing with our roofer, but they were out there, they got it fixed. And the result of their mistake, there was some drywall damage and they compensated the owners. So like those are
Oh,
the types of
nice.
vendors I want to work with that, I can trust them that they're gonna make it right if they do make a mistake.
Yeah, yeah, that's super important because it is really hard to find quality vendors these
Yes,
days.
it is.
More than ever before. Like it used to
Yes.
be hard. Now it's like, oh man, it's impossible. So that's really important, to have that behind a property management company.
Yep.
So balancing your personal commitments, business, life can be challenging. What daily habits or routines help you stay focused and effective?
So it's hard to have daily habits and routines with the current schedule of like schools and things when you have a
Oh yeah.
small child, for sure. There are days when I'm here in the house alone working, and then there's days where I have a little companion, but I try just, getting up at the same time every day, taking a little bit of time for myself in the morning, even if it's just to like do like a 10-minute exercise, something like that. Um, Trying to put working on my business first in the day is what
Hmm.
works for me. And I think for a lot of people, not as a property manager, I get so many emails. I get CC'd on things I don't need to be CC'd in. I do have an executive assistant who she gets in at 9 and her first task is to go through my email and do at least some sorting, get rid of all the stuff that I don't need to see, things that are being sent to me that she knows I don't want to look at, forwarding things if they've been sent to the wrong person, deleting things if it's like, oh, I have an account question. And if she sees that our bookkeeper is also CC'd, I don't need to see it. I know my bookkeeper is going to handle it. So she does a little bit of that. And that kind of also helps motivate me to be like, let her do her thing. Don't jump into the email because it's such a time suck. So, that's the time that I spend time trying to work on the business, right? Whether it's, I still I like to talk to all my new owners. Like as of now, I'm still doing sales. I'm probably going to be stepping out of that in the next like 3 to 6 months. We're probably going to hire a BDM. Um, but for now, like I might do that. I might, we just implemented Lead Simple back
Mm.
in February. So still working on some of my processes with that. So, like I said, working on processes, maybe looking at deals, right? Because that's going to grow my real estate side of my business. Just all those type of activities, trying to make them come first.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because a lot of, I feel it's still like really good for like the head of the property management company to like take calls in the beginning. I actually know somebody that manages around 4,000 units right now, and that person still takes the calls. Um, he shouldn't, like you're saying, you should be focusing on building that your business from the outside in instead of working in it, right? Um, but he still does it. I'm just like, man, it seems like it goes well because he really has all the nuggets in his head more so than that person that's you would hire to take the calls. But it's like, wow, that's a lot. I mean, that phone's ringing all the
Yeah.
time. You're setting appointments, so it's like delegating that and spending your time more valuable. I feel like yeah, that's better off when you delegate that, but just have the training behind them and whatnot.
And I like talking to owners, and I think that's why it's been like a hard thing to give up, because I like
Yeah.
hearing like, what are your pain points? What are your problems? And I like to know if we can actually solve them, because there are some people that are not good candidates for property management. They're just not. They're not ready to let go. They live
Hmm.
locally. They want to go to their property, especially if it's a multi-unit building. They want to be in the common areas. They want to have, a ton of input. And it's not like our owners can't have input, but I think, I've talked to people who have literally said things to me like, I don't want to rent to a family with children, and I'm like, well, I'm a licensed real estate agent. That would be very illegal for me to say. Like, I
Yeah.
can't do that for you,
Right.
or they want so much control over like who's in there. They don't want to listen to fair housing. Or I can sometimes tell just by their questions that are just so focused on like, how can I save money, that they're focusing on the wrong things. They'll be
Hmm.
very focused on like, oh my gosh, I want, something to do with like the landscaping or something outside my building, and like wanting to make sure it's perfect. And then I'll walk into the building and be like, this does not look good in here. You got this, that, or the other thing wrong. And like, or like major projects, they want to focus on the little cheap things that are going to make things look good, but they don't realize like, this is leaking, it's slowly damaging your building, this problem over here is expensive, but it's going to be more expensive 3 years from now if you don't deal with it. And meanwhile,
Right.
it's like they're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. So I can often tell, like, just talking to people, like, this isn't going to be a good fit. This is going to be more stress for me and my staff, because you're focused on the wrong things and you're not willing to listen to advice. And that's the thing. It's like I like to get a feel for, like, if you're hiring a manager and you're hiring a professional, there has to be a level of trust. Like, you have to feel
Absolutely.
like you can trust that person with your property. And when they're giving you their professional advice, I mean, I talk to attorneys who run into that problem too, where, right? It's like you tell the guy, just shut up when we're in court. And he's there like admitting, I did it. I did it. It's like, what can I do to help you at that point?
I experienced that. I was in eviction court probably like 2, 3 months ago, and an attorney literally told his client to shut up. You hired me. I'm the professional. Sit down and keep your mouth shut. Because the guy kept going nuts. Like every time the judge would say something, he would like get all riled up. And he would. It's funny though because people want so much control, but yet they hire the professionals and the experts you know, because they don't know what they don't know, but then all of a sudden, they become the know-it-all again. And it's like
Exactly. And
they're
that's
not the clients you want to work with.
right. They're not the clients I want to work with. And frankly, they're wasting their money. Like, what's
Yep.
the point of hiring a professional to help you if you're trying to like do it yourself? And it also can be, if someone has an occupied property that they've been self-managing, I want to talk to them about what that transition looks like, because I can't tell you. I mean, I had one the other day where someone was telling me they were moving away from their old property management company, but one of the things is it's like the tenants calling them to complain that the management company didn't fix their problem, and then they call the management company and finds out they sent a vendor, but it was like something the tenant did, and then the tenant was refusing the repair. And so it's like you just have more confusion when right then you're
More
calling it
work.
over because you don't like what the management company's telling you, you know. So we want to make sure that the person's going to be comfortable with if the tenant calls them, just immediately refer them back to us. Don't try to
Right.
solve their problem. Like you have to, again, you have to have trust in the professional you've hired. And if you can't do that, then maybe you need to keep self-managing because yeah.
Yeah, it just makes things worse for sure. Um, but if you had one piece of advice for aspiring real estate professional, entrepreneur, investor, property management company, that would make significant impact, what would that be?
Well, I would say like if you're in the city of Philadelphia, get involved with that jumpstart class. I mean, it's so reasonable for a great education. Take advantage of your mentor, right? Because they're going to assign you to someone who's done it before, and usually that person's going to be like a pretty cool person who's willing to sit down and meet with you. Walk through. If you find a deal, they're going to walk through that deal with you. They're going to physically be there. They're going to go through the property with you. Um, and then educate yourself and take advantage of them when it comes to hiring your contractor, because
Mm.
that's a big thing as a property manager. I've seen somebody calls me up and they say, great news. I'm finished my rehab. I'm ready for my first rental. I'm ready to turn it over to a property manager. And I go, great. And sometimes even at that point, I can't always see what's behind the walls, but it's like, okay,
Mm.
everything's good, everything's good. Tenant moves in, suddenly the plumbing's exploding all over the place because your contractor did not do a good job. And a lot of times you can see evidence on the outside. I mean, I walk through and it's like, you know, the way the floor is not trimmed off properly, right? Like the drywall, like you can still see the tape on the other side. Flooring's like a huge indicator where it's like they never put quarter round, right? Like it just kind of ends and it looks crappy. And I think that there's more competition these days, especially in some neighborhoods. And tenants can start to see that stuff. I was in one property
Oh
where
yeah.
the person's contractor had literally used exterior grade siding as the wall of the shower.
Oh
And
my
this was their
goodness.
completed rehab. And I think maybe tenants don't necessarily realize exactly what's throwing them off or making the property feel not good, even though it's a fresh rehab. They may not be able to even look and say, oh, it's because there's no trim there, or the corners of that trim don't match up properly, or, the floor is bubbly in this place. But it gives off an overall effect where good, decent tenants with like good credit and good jobs are not going to want to rent that property. Like they're just not
No.
going to apply. Like something about it doesn't feel good to them. And the other thing I would say is put laundry in your properties. Like these days, it's definitely gonna help rent. And don't try to rent a property you wouldn't want to live in. Maybe it's something. Maybe you don't like the area. It's not convenient for you. You don't like the block, whatever. But the actual house should feel like a place that you yourself would want to live. Don't go in with the mentality of like, it's just a rental, whatever. Like put, decent appliances in there. I mean, you don't have to go all out if the neighborhood doesn't call for it, but don't cheap out on the stuff that's going to wear out. Don't put, we did an experiment back in 2016 and we put like the cheap flooring, in a property. And, basically as soon as you touch it with a wet mop, it all starts like
Oh,
curling up. So, know what you're looking at, educate yourself. Lux vinyl flooring, like there's the cheap stuff, which is going to be really thin and wear out, or you pay a bit more to get the more expensive stuff, which is going to last you through several tenants.
yeah.
Um, don't cheap out on the mechanicals and the stuff and just try to put in pretty stuff. And so it'll look nice for a minute because it's not going to look nice 2 years down the road and you're going to be spending a lot on repairs.
Yeah, it's like you know, lipstick on a pig, or like when it comes to salespeople, what's it called? Shine and shit or something like that they call it, or they make it look real nice, but the insides are just awful. You know, definitely spend the extra money because real estate can cost you a ton of money and you can do one deal and be out for life just by one, but not doing it right the first time. And you just have a
You
ton of
hire
problems.
a bad contractor, they can even make it like they may still cost a lot, right? Like their price may feel like they're a good. contractor, but you know, and they'll pressure you for those payments. I know that's a lot of things that real estate classes talk about, don't let your contractor get ahead of you, but the pressure is real, where they're pushing you to pay out, or they may even argue with you that something, as a newbie, I think it's very easy to like, you hired this contractor, right? And we just talked about experts, like they're supposed to be your expert, but like check their reviews, get someone recommended, and just always like get your mentor to come look at something. If you feel like
Hmm.
something's not done right, if something doesn't look right to you, check that things are working, right? Before you pay for the garbage disposal, turn it on. Make sure that it's working, right? Because I've had things like turn the dishwasher on. Like the dishwasher looks like it there, and then you find out they never hooked it up, and now you
Yeah.
paid them and they've disappeared, right? So don't be afraid to walk through your property and check everything you can. Run the water through the pipes a bit, before you
Oh
start
yeah.
paying out for this stuff. Same with like inspections, right? I mean, in the city now, you kind of gotta pull permits, certainly in a lot of places, So don't just depend on the city inspector, but do before you give that final payment to your electrician, like, is that permit closed out?
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, one of my biggest thing is like running the water, every single bathroom, kitchen, turn the tub on and let that thing flow.
Yep.
Because yeah, they could be running water through like the finish steps and whatnot, but once a family moves in there, it's a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
There are loads of water going down, and it can work when you're in there, your cleaners are in there, no problem. But once a family moves in there, it's totally different. Next thing you know, the ceiling's coming down, it's leaking through the tub, and that's just a pain in the ass. And also, it's really unfair to the family that moves in there. So make sure your shit's buttoned up. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're working with a management company, like you can sign a contract with them earlier, at least with our company, and pay their team to come out and take a look at it. I mean, it's not a
Hmm.
guarantee. We're not home inspectors, but sometimes, I mean, I'm a realtor, right? But like our maintenance tech's going to see more things than I do. These pipes are pitched wrong. This is the wrong type of clamp on that. They can at least see some type, so it might be worth it if you're ever uncertain to pay a third party to come out and look at what's been done before you pay that contractor.
Yeah, that's for sure, Melissa. So for listeners who want to, connect with you or learn more about your work, what's the best place for them to go to?
Yeah, so my property management company is www.greaterphillipm.com. So you can get a lot on our website. We also have a Facebook page. You can look up Property Management International on Facebook. And then we also, my husband owns, and we didn't talk about, but we have a restoration and repair company. That's a little more his company. And he really specializes in like historic stuff, or like difficult oddball projects. I say he's kind of like a specialty contractor with some of that stuff. So you can find him Heritage Restoration Repair on both YouTube and Facebook. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, he has a lot of cool videos about like how to solve certain problems. We have one coming up soon about we have tenants in our 5 unit that busted the washer lid, because it has like a locking thing once it's
Hmm.
going, where you're not really supposed to reopen it. It's a commercial machine, and they just pulled it up. So he was able to do a quick repair on that and save us a lot of money on buying a whole new piece or a new washer even. So he does a lot of stuff like that. Pretty
That's
cool.
super important.
Yeah.
Well, Melissa, it was a pleasure having you on
Yeah.
Philly Fortune Talks.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Philly Fortune Talks with Jake Penny. Inspired to share your success story? Visit phillyfortunetalks.com/guest and let's inspire together.